Guys, welcome to this week's meeting. We'll start with a prayer. Jason, would you mind offering that for us?
Sure. Heavenly Father, we are grateful to be gathered as a small group today to talk about our readings and our ideas. We ask that thou bless the internet and technology to all work well so we can communicate clearly with each other, and that we can have the Holy Ghost to have good ideas and inspiration. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome. All right, so if you guys want to pull up that article and those questions for the reflection, basically the video today is going to be going over those same questions that we had from the reflection. Yeah, that's what it was. All right, so first question, based off this article, from your personal experience, what have been key behaviors in effective teams? You guys got any thoughts on that?
I'll go if that's okay. I think after doing these readings, it's really highlighted a lot of the successful teams that I've been a part of, and I would describe it as emotional intelligence, emotional IQ, or what the reading said. I think it was like social, the right norms, or however they described it. But I would definitely agree with what we read about, that people that can read people's emotions and work effectively with people. That's been the most effective things I've seen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's good. I've noticed in my groups that have been successful, it's been sorry, I have a strawberry seed stuck in my tooth. Okay. So I've noticed that when everybody participates, it has like a bigger effect than what you expect. So not only are you getting more ideas out and like throwing out more options to choose from, you have a better chance of getting the right answer or the best solution when you've got more ideas presented. So that's one part of one benefit of everybody being active. But another one is that when everybody's active, you're not doing all the work yourself. And I find that when the load is unbalanced, it's easy to have resentments and to shut down communication and to, I don't know, it just has a huge impact. It's not just somebody didn't show up. It's like now everybody's got to pick up the slack. And then on top of that, your attitudes change. But when you have everybody present and active and you get to know each other, it's easier to say, hey, I noticed you weren't at the meeting. Are you still doing your part? It's easier to have those dialogues when people have been present all along and you've got a relationship with them.
Yeah, that's super true. I think what I've always noticed is like the teams that I've been in that have had success have been really people focused. So basically what you guys said, where I think it has to be people focused, but also there has to be like a clear leader and a clear organization. I think we'll get into I think some of these other questions. But one example that I talked about was a rugby team that I played on when I was in high school. Our coach was really focused on us, like building us up individually and making sure that we like had good character, that we were honest, and like he focused on our personal lives as well. I thought it was interesting in the article. It said that the good teams, they were friends both like at work and off duty. They didn't just say hi, goodbye, but they kept a relationship. So I think that's really important because you're able to bounce ideas off of each other and stuff.
I think that's a good point to bring up.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes in a little bit with the social and emotional IQ, like being able to read each other. It's easier to do that. Like if you aren't naturally able to do that, it's easier to figure that out if you have a relationship with them.
Absolutely.
Do you guys have any more thoughts on this one?
Um,
Oh, go ahead, Jason.
sorry. Oh, go ahead. My voice just gave out.
No, you're good. I've already said my piece. You're good.
Sorry.
Hey Jason, where are you meeting? It looks like you're in like the janitorial closet.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, it's just in the office where I work.
Nice. That's awesome that you can meet while you're at work.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I agree that the emotional intelligence is the most important. But I was just gonna add, kind of like we talked about last week, kind of sharing the same vision for whatever the group is for helps. If you're divided on what you're trying to accomplish, that can kind of ruin things. Even in like a school group, if some people are just trying to get by, get through it, and then other people are really trying to learn, then it can make it hard. So, but that's all.
Yeah.
So what did you say then? What was your sorry. Were you saying like have everybody having an equal drive? Is that what you said? I wasn't paying attention. Sorry.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks. Jeez.
Just everyone needs to kind of going in the same direction. Yeah.
Okay.
I've
Definitely.
Awesome. All right. So for the next question, what do group norms have to do with effective team building? First of all, do you guys want to, what are group norms for you guys? How would you guys explain a group norm?
From what I got, I would translate that as like an organizational culture, like
That's a really good
cultural behaviors. Now they can be off of a good norm or bad culture, good culture, but that's what I really saw from that Google reading. That's the way, because they even kind of use some language about, they would talk about norms and they would talk about like social cultures. So I think they're kind of, that's the way that
You said organizational culture. That's a good way to put it. That's what you said.
Yeah, that's how. Okay. If that makes sense.
Oh, that makes sense.
Good.
Yeah. I feel like most time when I'm in groups, right when it starts, it's a little kind of weird because everyone wants someone to like, I don't know, be the leader, I guess. So there's like a delay and then someone will be like, okay, I'll be the leader. And then that person becomes the leader and then it seems like there'll be a few people that are just kind of following them and then one or two will just kind of drop off or not really participate. I don't know.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, like a pattern that comes up in, especially like a group that's newly organized. You say like, all right, who's in charge? And then you got people who will probably never take charge unless they're put in that position. So that's probably some patterns that appear a lot in businesses and teams. I think also, my thoughts were pretty much what you were saying about organizational culture, basically the way things usually work and like patterns that you find in a team. And I think, so that like that question, what do group norms have to do with effective team building? I think in terms of team building, if you have a pattern of communication and of like, I don't know the word for this, but you just continually listen to people. If that's one of your norms, for example, then you're going to have a group that's going to be open to new ideas, a group that's not going to just step on each other, and a group that's probably going to work pretty effectively.
I like that. I was talking with, I was talking with one of my colleagues, and they're pretty versed in this topic, and he talked about like group norms or organizational culture, and every group will actually adopt a culture whether you like it or not. Like it just happens, and typically the ones with the most dominant personalities will really like set the culture. Like it's when you're with your friends, usually like, or maybe a new group of friends at college, or maybe you move into a new ward, like those dominant personality traits will take over the culture. And some groups will get lucky and they'll get somebody that's got a dominant personality and they've actually got good team building skills, and they'll just luckily get a good culture. But in terms of like what group norms have to do with effective team building, like if you want to, like in an organization, if you want to have good group norms, you've got to work on it, and you've got to set like a, what do you call it? Like a
set the tone.
Yeah, like you set like values, like you gotta, basically you just need to put something in place where you work on good norms, because you're gonna have a group norm whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
So
that is true.
I like what you said about a dominant personality setting the tone. That, and I see that in different situations, that, you know, the person who's kind of the squeaky wheel gets the grease sort of thing, you know, like one who's talking the most or the most active kind of sets the pace, but it's not always the right one. So, you know, sometimes you have to work at it. I think that's, you know, it's good. It's a good thing to know that going into a situation, so that you can be proactive, or, you know, kind of be aware of that.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, our current B321 group norms include. It's kind of hard to say because this is our second time meeting.
I agree. I was having a hard time with that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, well, this is my first meeting, and based off of like, in the reading, it talked about like equal conversation. I don't know if you guys read that. What was the language they used?
Equality in conversation. It was some big way to say everybody talks the same amount.
Yeah, exactly. From my observations, I feel like it's done well at that. So
We all take turns.
I think so. I think it's
Man,
good.
what was that phrase? It was
looking for
a little drawn out in my opinion. I was like, okay, we could have cut that down.
Yeah. It was very wordy. Equality in distribution of conversational turn taking.
Yeah, that's just people trying to show you that they have a PhD in something. No, but that's true though. That is a good. I guess we could say that's our norm. We have equality in the distribution of conversational something.
Yeah.
Turn taking. Yeah. That was on page 4.
Page 4.
Yeah.
Random question.
go for it.
Where the heck is the sign-up sheet for being the group leader?
On the group, the one where we signed up for the groups, at the bottom there's a tab for group leader.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah.
We can get that for the next.
It's okay, Jason. I actually didn't know that either. I was going to go search for it, but
Okay, I was like clicking
Thanks for
on
asking
every
that.
single thing. Like, nowhere.
So I kind of like how it focused. It said unspoken and spoken norms. I think spoken norms might come from a source of leadership. So say, your leader says, okay, from here on out, we're going to do this every week, or we're going to take this way of doing things. That's kind of what a spoken norm is like. Okay, this is our path of action. But an unspoken norm, I think that's stuff that kind of develops over time that you don't necessarily write down, but it's just kind of understood. So like kind of back to that cultural, and especially with the last week's reading with the Debbie company with the muffins or cupcakes or whatever it was, they kind of had that culture that we assumed with the context. And then those were probably some unspoken norms that they had of being maybe a little more relaxed, a little laid back. So that's something that I kind of noticed when I was reading too. You guys
I'd say one of the unspoken norms would be, sorry,
No, go for it.
I don't want to draw that too long, but the psychological safety, I think that's something that's like one of those things you were talking about like being developed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that goes into the next one of how does psychological safety.
Oh, shoot.
You blew it.
Yeah, you're making my transitions easy. How does psychological safety in a team increase overall effectiveness? So what would you say, Cade?
Well, I think that it allows for healthy conflict. because like a lot of times when you're working with people, I think that like, you'll have some different opinions and you want to avoid like offending them or vice versa. Like you just kind of are scared of that. But when you build an atmosphere of psychological safety, like people can work things out and you can get the best solution, and you can trust, you just you're just able to work better. And it creates that healthy conflict. So, and I've read the 5 dysfunctions of a team for this course, that book that we have to read.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll talk a lot about like healthy conflict. I think it's like the second dysfunction, but
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. I think that psychological safety can increase overall effectiveness because when you're relaxed and comfortable, you're more likely to engage. If you're uptight and worried about being yelled at or dismissed or whatever, then you're not really fully participating in the meeting or in the group and in the work.
That's a good point.
Just from my experience, I feel like the best way to have this or make the psychological safety happen or whatever is if a leader in the group, whether they're like the actual appointed leader or they're kind of a natural leader, if they'll, I think you talked about it in the reading, but if they'll kind of be vulnerable, like that guy admitted he had cancer and he was going to die basically. But I mean, the truth is all of us have deep feelings and emotions and self-esteem issues from time to time and that. And so if someone else is vulnerable and then it creates that safe space, then everyone else feels more.
I think when you show your vulnerability and it's received appropriately,
yeah,
like
exactly.
when everybody reacts to it in the right way, that just builds on the strength.
Yeah, then everyone else is like, oh, I can share sensitive feelings without being afraid that people are just gonna laugh at me or shut me down or something like that. Exactly.
So were there any, I'm trying to scroll through the article, were there any instances where there wasn't psychological safety? I think they're kind of in the beginning, before it got to Google, before it got to the Project Aristotle, it talked about was she a PhD student or she was at the Harvard Business School, right?
I think Yale.
Yale,
yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
I think that was a really interesting perspective that they gave, where I think so. Like she had 2 different teams that she was a part of, a study group and then was it a case group? I can't remember. But basically, one of them, they were a lot more strict. They didn't have relationships outside of the meetings. They kind of followed like a we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we're done. And I don't think they had that psychological safety net, I guess, where people were willing to open up, maybe because they were afraid of like taking too long or afraid of saying something that might not fit in with the subject, compared to the other group. What I noticed as so here it says they emailed one another dumb jokes. They spent a couple minutes at the beginning of each minute chatting. They when they brainstormed, they threw out some kind of crazy ideas, like things that they probably knew wouldn't go through, but they were just kind of showing everybody where they were at. So I think that was a really good example of one group having no psychological safety. People were just basically robots doing what they were supposed to do. The other one, they were more willing to kind of go outside the box.
What an interesting experience for her to have both of those extremes at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, it must feel nice to know, like, okay, it's probably not just me. Like,
yeah,
for something good.
And one more thing I wanted to add, I think one way one factor for why the groups were different was the people they were made up with. I don't know who was in the first group. I think they were all of them were Yale students, but the second group, they had an Army officer, a researcher at a think tank, a director of a health education organization, and a consultant to a refugee program. So that's like for opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of careers, but they all had their own insights that they could bring. And when it came to Google, lots of people, it's a super diverse company. So that's probably one big factor, is having diversity in your groups too.
Absolutely.
Are we still on that third one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying to stretch it out. We still got
Yeah.
30 minutes.
I know, this is tricky, right? Yikes.
Is it a requirement to be like an hour or so, or?
It does say that, yeah.
Okay. What was the second part?
Yeah, so the second part, what are the roles of communication and empathy in creating psychological safety? So communication and empathy, how do those factor into psychological safety?
I think that they kind of snowball and build on each other. So when you communicate your your vulnerabilities, and then if you receive empathy back, you're more apt to kind of open up a little bit further. You kind of test the water, and then you receive good feedback that makes you feel safe, so you can kind of share a little bit more and make better communications. I think that they build on each other.
Definitely. Any other thoughts for that?
I think that just like the first thing in building that atmosphere is what she was saying. Like, well, they just really snowball, but you have to find a way to build that trust. And we read about this. We'll talk about it. You just got to find a way to connect with people and build relationships, because really, I mean, it's all about what we're really talking about is relationships in a group. And so that's what it's about, is you've got to find ways to really communicate, and, just kind of what you guys have been saying, but that's my take on it.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely agree with both of those thoughts. Jason, did you have anything to add for that one, or do you want to go to the next one?
Well, the thought just came to me that if we wanted, it would take up some time, apply this in our group, and spend. Last week we did a little bit. This week we kind of just jumped into it, where we could spend the first few minutes just everyone going around sharing about themselves.
That's true. We can argue that it says that's important. And,
I'm not.
We should have started the video like 20 minutes earlier when we were all just chit-chatting.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what we were doing. We were all just sitting around talking for like a half hour.
That's totally what we were doing.
Right.
Well, I think that is good, because also when you, especially like if you go on Google's example, like that's a company that pretty much everybody is under a lot of stress, because they're operating like one of the biggest companies in the world. They're managing pretty much every human being's personal data, which is kind of freaky, but like they've got a lot on their plate. So when they go into these meetings, like, hey, our server shut down and it's our fault, what do we do? If you can kind of ease into it, I mean, you can't waste too much time, but you don't want to be, I don't know, I'm not an employee there, but I just think that a way to kind of soften the ground before heavy discussion, before somebody gets fired or somebody gets pointed out, like, hey, you forgot to do your job, but how's your family doing? I think that's some good stuff.
Yeah, facility's on fire.
But like,
our weekend first,
maybe in some extreme instances, like in the office where they think the whole building is burning.
I think what you're saying, McKay, is like your relationship is deeper than the conflict that is about to happen. So it's not like an extreme personal, like you're not throwing jabs at each other.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
And that has to happen before the fire starts, before Ryan puts the Hot Pocket in the microwave.
Because
if it doesn't, then it is personal.
Right. You got to have that foundation.
And yeah, that's a good point. I think that goes back to having relationships outside of the team construct. You know, having a relationship outside of work, having. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. And empathy, I think, that's a big one too. That's like just a general human characteristic that we should all work on, is just being empathetic, or at least sympathetic. Because if you can't sympathize with people, and if you can't I think what I put in my answer was empathy is important because it helps you find, what's the word? Not solid ground, but find like a
Common ground.
common ground. Yeah. Because like we were saying, in these companies and in these teams, we're all coming from different backgrounds. I mean, even just in our own group, we've all got different career paths that we're trying to go, different ways we were raised, but we have common ground of, attending the same university, probably similar interest in business. So finding that common ground and building off that instead of focusing on what's different, I think that really helps in building that psychological safety net.
Yeah. After thinking about it, a really good example of this psychological safety, I worked in an organization as an assistant to a director. And then there was and we'd have these weekly meetings about goals we had, and some of the divisional managers would be a part of it. And typically it would just be it was really just a meeting with one of the main divisions of this organization. The manager would be there, and then the director, and then a few other people. But I remember one of my first meetings that I was there, I came in new to the organization, and they would go into these debates like heated. And I was like awkward. I was like, oh my gosh, like these guys are like, they do not like each other. And I was like, what in the world is happening? And then as time goes on, I got to know them better. You could tell like they would go and have these super and they would get mad at each other. And then they would, after the meeting would end, they would close at noon and go work out together and go to lunch. And they were
That's
really
funny.
good friends outside of the meeting. Like as time went on, I could see that they were like good buds. Like they just had this good relationship. And so it was just a good example, because people also in the organization were like that too. As turnover happened, I could tell that it would happen with other people. And so they were a really good example of that, because in the meetings they were ruthless. But
That's funny. As a newbie, you're like, whoa, these people are insane.
yeah.
I can yell at anybody I want. That's cool.
So we have a construction company, and it's kind of like a family business. My husband, we're the owners, but we've got his brother working.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so his brother works with us, and then 3 of my boys work with us. And so it's kind
What
of
type
family.
of construction is it?
Residential. Just
Okay.
we do mostly remodels, not a lot of big projects. We do a lot of small stuff because there's no competition.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Nice.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
That's awesome.
But it's very interesting. So then we also have 2 other people that work with us, and they're not members of the church, or I'm sorry, they are members of the church. So they're kind of like family as well. And so we've got this kind of, everybody's super comfortable, and it makes for some interesting dynamics. Like last week, I heard my husband yell out to one of the workers, "Hey, how much is that conversation costing me?"
Ooh.
I know, right? They're just sitting around chit-chatting. Yeah. But it's interesting how it enables you, when you've got a good solid foundation of a personal connection with people, you can say those things, get right to the point. You don't have to call a meeting or you don't have to cushion it. You can just say, "Hey, you're costing me money,"
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to take it. They're going to change what they're doing. And well, you hope that they're going to change what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I've seen that having that good foundation, a good strong relationship, means that you can just be blunt, get down to business, and then get back to work. Take care of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that all has to be built on a trust that's established beforehand too. You guys are family. You've been working together. You have that shared relationships, shared trust. I was going to share a similar experience. Well, it was in construction, but it's like the opposite of what it sounds like you guys have going on. I worked construction one semester, and the group dynamic was just really, really bad. We were like, all the contractors hated each other. One of them was like, there was a father and son who hated each other's guts because the son was in and out of prison and missing probation, and then our foreman was just a jerk. Everybody hated each other, and it was miserable, but put food on my table. But I learned a really good lesson that, like, our foreman would just call people out 24/7, like, hey, you're doing this wrong, you suck, figure out, do your job. But there's never that like pre-established relationship of trust before. So every time he would talk to somebody, that person would just get super offended. And they say, hey, I'm a contractor too. I know what I'm doing. And so there was never like, hey, you're doing this wrong. You might want to do this. Okay, boss, that's a good idea. I'll try it. It was always, no, I'm right and you're wrong. And so we wasted so much time. And I was like, I'm done with you guys. I can't do this anymore. But we wasted so much time and their money too, just bickering. And then it would get to the point where people would just go and do their own thing. And so the foreman didn't even have control of the team at that point. Wow. So that was a pretty good example for me of where there's not psychological safety. And in construction and those kind of jobs, you don't want to say, hey guys, let's get together and develop psychological safety and work on empathizing.
Yeah. It doesn't work.
That's not how that culture works. And frankly, I don't talk about it.
It would help and it would work.
I'm sure it would work, but I think that's kind of one of those things that goes unspoken, where you build that relationship and say, sure, like, ask how their families are doing, ask if there's anything going on in their lives that, might distract them from work. So I think that was kind of the opposite example. Most jobs I've worked in, I hope it's not me, but most jobs, they seem to have been pretty bad at establishing that.
So my family is also in construction. We're in the concrete industry. Okay. And we do all phases of concrete, commercial and residential. And so kind of taking it another direction. So the Ritz-Carlton company, the hotel company. Mm-hmm. So I've never stayed there, but if you do go stay there, I know that if you ask an employee like, hey, where's the bathroom at? Like the bathroom in the lobby. They'll personally stop what they're doing and walk you to the bathroom. Like they'll take you to it, or say, hey, where's the spa area? They'll take you to it.
They do,
and that happens.
What?
Do they? Yeah, they do.
Exactly. At Walmart, yeah.
That's also a super good example. They do
Walmart.
that at Walmart.
Right.
And that's not by chance. Like, so that is not by chance. Like that happens what these companies do. And I almost guarantee you that Walmart's probably doing the same thing. But what they did was they come up with these core values, like 5 or 6 of them, and then they come up with all these behaviors. Mm-hmm. And they've got this like language, I guess you could say, or these guidelines that they go by, and they have like I think it's every day, the Ritz-Carlton will have a meeting where the employees, they'll meet with their group, and the employees will teach the criteria. So like everybody is trained in it. And so right now in the company that my family is in, they're going through this thing where they've come up with core values, and they're going to soon be having it like with the executive team, the sales team, the operator, like the concrete equipment operators are going to be going through these meetings. Because in construction, it's super hard. Like, McKay, you know it. Heather, you definitely know it more than any of us. Like, implementing those core values and then having like the employees teach those, I think that it can develop that, what do we say? Why is my psychological safety? I think that it can help develop that.
And I think that also helps them to kind of buy into it. That sounds like a bad connotation, but
totally.
like kind of becoming invested in this whole concept. If they're teaching it, they're kind of owning it a little bit. I think they talked about it in the 7 Habits. He talked about the hotel where everybody wrote their mission statement
Mm.
Like it wasn't, every department had their own, every person was personally involved. And I think that helps to kind of own it.
I think that helps the, we talked about those like alpha personalities who they're going to be the ones to go out and take lead and they'll take initiative. But I think when you have those, these examples where you come up with core values and have people write mission statements, have people get involved, that kind of activates the less, what do you say, the people who probably wouldn't be very proactive.
Yeah.
It brings the people up who have a lot to give. They're just not, they might get kind of overrun by the really intense personalities. It kind of gives them an opportunity to say, hey, I think this should be a part of our core values. I think as a team we could do better at this, and then that kind of gets all of the different personalities involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jason, have you worked construction? Do you have any other experiences on that?
I used to lay tile.
There we go.
Nice.
with,
Contracting work. We're all on the same boat.
my cousin, but we got along pretty well. There was never any conflict, really.
That's good.
Oh, actually, that's not true. There was plenty of unspoken conflicts.
Oh yeah.
Never verbalized any of it.
But I'm glad that your guys are able to work with the family, because I know most contracting jobs. I've worked a lot of contracting jobs. Whenever there's family involved, it rarely works. Especially when those families kind of have personal struggles on the outside. I laid carpet for a construction company for a couple months, and it was actually my uncles who kind of ran the show, and they haven't gotten along for a long time. And that just created another example of where nobody was able to talk. Nobody was able to say, hey, maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe what we're doing right now is dangerous and we should figure out a better way to do this. You could never say that because somebody's going to get offended. But that was a really good discussion about that. We can move on to the next one, which kind of goes into what we've been talking about. How does sharing personal experience and being vulnerable influence team dynamics? Thinking of Sakaguchi.
Random plug, kind of along with this, kind of along with their things. I was just gonna say, the more, like, you ever feel yourself like judging someone super hardcore, you don't like someone, and from my experience, all that tells you is to learn more about them.
True.
You're making decisions together. Someone by an airport.
I was gonna say.
I'm not sure.
I just remember. I don't remember the question anymore.
How does sharing personal experience influence team dynamics?
Okay, sorry, I'm going off 3 hours sleep right now. Just kind of group like on the mission. I just remember whenever I did companion, and then when we were trying to share personal testimony, it really helped.
Yeah.
See where the other person was coming from instead of just being super angry at him.
Yeah.
Anything. So it's kind of the same in group.
I thought it was interesting in Sakaguchi there. He had worked with the team for 10 months and none of them knew that he had a terminal illness. Like
yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, like that's a relatively long period of time for that big of an issue. Yeah. So it's easy to just kind of let things slide or just kind of think that people are going to know what you're going through just because you go to church with them or just because they're your family, or that they're going to have some sort of an idea of what your struggles are in life, and it just doesn't come naturally. Like you have to share those things. You have to put some work into it. It's not just a passive thing. Building those relationships and being vulnerable, and it's something you have to do.
Have you guys ever been in a team environment or like in a job where you had a leader or somebody who kind of had a good example of being vulnerable that helped the team? You guys got any examples?
Okay, so I took the human resource management class with through BYU Idaho. What was it? Jeremiah Cochran, I think was the instructor's name, and he came across as like a real hard nose and like a hard grader. We were worried. Like our group was really worried. It was a all group based activities, writing huge papers. Like every other week we had to write a huge paper. It was a big deal. And he came across as being kind of jerky. And one time the very first paper we got like, I don't know, like a B or a C on it. And I was talking to one of my group mates or teammates and we were like, I don't get how we didn't do well on this paper. Like that doesn't make sense. So we reached out to him and said, hey, can you meet with us and tell us what's going on here? And he said, sure. So we met and, half the team didn't show up, but this girl and I came, we were there and he's reading through and he says at the end, after going through the paper, he goes, I don't really know why I gave you such a bad grade. I must have graded a really bad paper before yours and I was in a terrible mood. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a real answer. Like he didn't stick to his guns. He wasn't like, no, I'm right. You did a bad job. He was like, yeah, I'm changing your grade. And
Nice.
yeah, so this other group member and I were like, all right, this is good. It just changed how we viewed him. He became approachable. We were going out on a limb by saying, that we didn't agree with the grade he gave us. I had never done that before. She had never done that before, but we were really convinced that we had done a good job. And actually, kind of on an off note, this lady and I had been in another class together and we were group members and, we'd been paired up just by chance. And so, but we really hit it off. Like we speak the same language, we talk the same way, like we can finish each other's sentences. It's like we're made to be sisters or something. So when we found out that we both had the same class next semester, she switched it around so she could be in my section so we could be in the same class. And then we like asked to be in the same group, even though it was like random assignments. We emailed the instructor, hey, can you put us together? Because we know we work well together. It was all just a good experience. And talking this week about building teams, it just brought me back to this one lady, like, because we had a connection, we were able to work well together. We were able to continue that into the next group and have so many positive experiences. And it never would have happened if we hadn't connected personally.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's way cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And cool thing, my daughter is headed out for her mission at the end of this month and she's going to Idaho Falls, which is where this lady lives. So it's
nice.
kind of,
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
yeah. I'm like, oh, it's such a small world.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Going to the Idaho Falls mission?
Yeah.
Oh.
Are you
from Maryland?
I'm in New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
I guess
Yeah.
that's pretty far. That's
That's
a
where I
culture
grew
shock.
up, so.
Yeah. Where do you guys live?
I'm in Rexburg right now.
You are? Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Idaho Falls though, so.
Okay. That's cool. Cade, where are you from? Where do you live?
Just north of Houston, Texas.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So typically I would be in Rexburg, but I got surgery and I'm bedridden, as you can see.
Yes.
You look like you're sitting on like a church pew.
That's what I was wondering.
Oh, no, it looks like a headboard to a bed.
Yeah, it's a headboard. I'm so
Oh.
sad because I can't get up on my knee at all. I have to stay
Oh,
off of it.
that's terrible.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I know, Heather, did you say that you needed to leave 10 minutes early?
I was hoping to, but obviously
shoot.
we've gotten sidetracked.
That's true. I guess you have to be the one to stop the recording too. So whenever you need to
Okay.
finish, I'm sure we'll be fine.
You're totally fine, Heather.
50
All right.
minutes.
Is it Heather? I noticed on your name it's Heather Ann.
Yeah, I don't know why it says that. Heather Ann is my full name, but I just go by Heather.
Okay,
So
Okay.
Heather's good.
cool.
All right, so we've judged me and Cade by our backgrounds. Let's look into Heather's and McKay's little. Cade, closet looks a little
Backgrounds? Did you
dirty.
guys
Oh, you're looking at the
You're in
background of the,
dormer.
yeah,
see what you're saying?
yeah.
Up in that,
Apartment.
up in that corner, it looks like there's kind of just a little stack of
Are we looking at
There.
Are we
Yep.
looking at me or McKay right now?
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. I can't get McKay to go on to a bigger screen. McKay, say something.
Hello. Check,
There we
check.
go.
1, 2.
Okay, so we've got an open closet,
Yep.
fully open,
Nah, there's no doors.
but it's fairly organized.
It is. I like to keep things pretty neat.
Nice.
I just have a lot of stuff for a little apartment. I'm in ROTC on campus. I'm on a scholarship with the Army, so we get a
sweet.
lot of gear, and I have nowhere to put any of it. So I basically pile it all up, put it in my bags, pull it all out when I need it.
Wow.
It's kind of frustrating, but
Awesome.
well, I guess we can wrap it up with
Okay.
this last question. What can you do as an individual to initiate effective team behavior? So if you guys, what do you guys think? Would any of you guys consider yourselves to be like really alpha? Like you're always the team leader. You're always the one who's like, all right, let's do this. This is the initiative. Would any of you guys consider yourselves to be like that?
I feel like I have a tendency to be the first one to say, okay, when are we meeting and where are we meeting, and like take the first in general. Like it's not unusual for me to take the first time as team leader because I just want to get it done. And I also know that people are going to cut me some slack because it's the first one.
That's another strategy.
So I think I am a little bit like, I try not to be pushy and opinionated, but I think sometimes I am.
All right, so we have identified the alpha.
So I definitely get that impression.
I'm a mother of 4, so I'm really used to bossing people around, and you guys are all the same age as my kids, so
That's funny. That's what my sister was always super mellow, and she is mellow, but she's had 4 kids. One of them's got like pretty bad ADHD and stuff. So definitely become much more of a alpha personality than she was before, just because you have to keep your household sane.
Absolutely.
So I guess I just asked that because I think all of us, we all have different personalities. I'm studying psychology, so I kind of like to look at things from a psychological perspective for teams, where every group has, everybody is raised in different situations. Some of us grew up in wealthy families, some of us grew up in poor families, some of us went to really nice schools, some of us didn't have all those resources, but we all can kind of funnel all that experience into something productive. So I think one thing is an individual that we can do to initiate effective team behavior is to not be afraid to, express ourselves and express like our background and say, hey, this is my experience. This is what I think works. We shouldn't be afraid to do that. We should be proud of like where we came from. So be willing to listen to others. So I guess my input is be yourself, but be willing to cooperate. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think that's excellent.
Likewise.
Cool. I love being right.
Cool beans.
Awesome. Well, I guess we could wrap this up. I guess as a summary, it said like final summary, build that psychological safety net, let others express themselves, don't be a tool, don't step on other people, and be vulnerable, guys. Go share your personal experience with that one. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have to do that, but
Okay, starting on next time, everyone's going to read a page from their journal. No, I'm just
okay.
Oh yeah.
Go deep.
That doesn't exist for me.
Yeah, I had one on my mission and I haven't opened it since. So, I got an email, I think from someone in my accountability group project who asked if he could join our group. I'm not sure like if groups are still open. I don't know how that works. Can we like add people, or are we just trying to keep it at like 4?
I think we can add people, and I think adding is great because that lessens the number of times we have to lead.
That's true.
And it gives us more diversity and helps us to experience different ideas and different backgrounds.
Absolutely.
Right?
That works for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I guess his work changed his shift, so he has to do like his only opportunity for meeting time is Wednesday mornings, and so I said that we do that. So I'll shoot him an email, and then if he decides to join our group, I'll add him in our if we have an email group thing or a text message when I get his number. So
Okay. On the sign-up sheet, are we supposed to sign up like 3 times, 1 time?
I think it depends on how many
people.
Yeah, I think.
Okay.
And there's not like it's very clear like on the sheet that there's 1 week that you don't need a leader. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's pretty clear. And
Okay.
I'm happy to take my name off. I think I put myself down 3 times because mathematically that's how it worked out. But if we're bringing somebody else in,
Yeah.
Okay.
we'll see.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
not sure.
Well,
what
I'll go
time
do
it is
that,
for
and
me
if
next
it's added,
week.
we can change it.
We could put that in the group message because I might have some stuff in the morning. But
Okay, I think 2 of you are talking at the same time. What were you saying, Kay?
we could just. I'm not sure exactly what time it will work for me next week, but we can put that in the group message.
That sounds good. I'm pretty open next week, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Works for me. All right. You're recording it, right, Heather?
I am. Yeah. You want me to stop it? Are we
Sure.
done? Okay.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right.